First law of motion. The first law of motion states that an object at rest tends to stay at rest, and an object in motion tends to stay in motion, unless acted upon by an unbalanced or outside force. A good example of this law that we all have been through and we all know is when you're in the car and the driver suddenly slams on the brakes and everyone just jerks forward. The explanation to this is when the car was moving, the passengers were also moving, and when the car suddenly stopped, the moving passengers tried to maintain their state of forward motion because of their inertia, which is the tendency of an object to stay at rest/motion. And the car was the only thing that had a force acting upon it, which were the brakes. The brakes were the force stopping your car. And since you had no force acting upon you, that's why you keep going forward. And so, but then later on, there goes the seatbelt, which brings you to a stop, But yeah, that's a really good example of the first law of motion. Another example of the first law of motion is the trick where you thump an index card from under a quarter. The way that this law ties in with this trick is the quarter was at rest, and when you thumped the card from under it quickly, it remained at rest, just simply falling into the cup, rather than flying away with the index card. Only the index card had a force acting upon it, so therefore that's why it's the only thing that moved. As for your quarter, it didn't have a force acting on it, so it just minded its own business and did not go along with the card. So that's why it just fell, going along to this law. The second law of motion. The second law of motion states that the force acting on an object equals the object's mass times its acceleration. So basically, the greater the mass, the greater the force. A good example for this is pushing/moving a piece of exercise furniture with someone on it compared to moving the same piece of furniture with no one aboard. The explanation for this, when trying to move the exercise furniture with someone aboard, it'll be heavier and it will require more force for you to move it. And when you try to move the same piece of furniture with no one on it, of course it'll be lighter and it will require less force to move. Another example of the second law of motion is moving two different sized weights by pulling on them on a strap. The larger weight, of course, would require more force to be moved just simply because it's heavier, and the smaller weight will just require less force than the bigger one just because it's simply smaller and it weighs less. And so, just like the law stated, the greater the mass, the greater the force. The third law of motion. The third law of motion states that for every force, there is an equal and opposite force. A good example for this law is releasing a balloon filled with air. Now, you must wonder, what causes the balloon to go upward? It is simply the fact that the same amount of energy that the balloon is exerting downward is the same amount of energy that it's receiving upward, and so that's really what causes the upward motion of the balloon. It's just simply that they're equal and opposite forces acting on each other. Another example for the third law of motion is two persons pushing against each other. Now, simply the two persons are applying the same amount of force against each other, but it's just that one force is going one way and the other force is going the other way. So that means that they are opposite. So it is an equal and opposite force, just like the law of Newton states. espérense. Maritza, pídate para atrás.
No viene nadie.
You sure?
Yes.
Because I don't want to kill nobody.
Go.
Sí, güey, ¿qué estoy haciendo?
Where are you going?
I'm going backwards. Is this good enough?
I think that's good.
Okay.
Nomás no le pegues a la truck.
¿Prendan las luces?
Okay, go.
Okay. Thingy go like that too. No, de Rosario. Hey, ¿dónde la vine a parar?
It's Fraser.
Hey,
What happened? I let her fall.
what are you doing? Just kidding. Wait.
Okay.
Oh, you're ready.
I don't think this one works. No, you get.
Oh, I'm recording now. Oh.
Coming for you.